The ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface and contains 97% of the planet's water. But what is most astonishing is not its dimensions, but its depth. The Mariana Trench descends almost 11 kilometers below the surface, and most of that vast blue expanse remains unexplored. In that realm of darkness and currents, of abyssal zones and luminous reefs, life has evolved over millions of years into forms of complexity and predatory efficiency unmatched in any other ecosystem on the planet. The seas are not simply the backdrop of terrestrial life, they are the original stage, the evolutionary laboratory where predation was perfected until it became an art. Speaking of ocean predators involves confronting an immediate problem of scale. How is the danger of a marine animal measured? By its size, by the effectiveness of its venom, by its tactical intelligence? The answer is complex, because the ocean has produced predators that are extraordinarily different from one another. Some are colossi of 20 meters that can crush their prey with the pressure of a jaw, and others are almost invisible creatures whose toxin can kill an adult human in a matter of minutes. The diversity of hunting strategies that exists in the seas is so broad that it is difficult to frame them under a single definition of danger. This overview addresses the great ocean predators not only from the perspective of their raw physical power, but also from the complexity of their behaviors, their evolutionary adaptations, and, in some cases, the mysteries that science has not yet been able to resolve. Because the deep ocean holds secrets that continue to challenge marine biologists, and some of its most formidable inhabitants have barely been observed in the wild. Few animals in natural history have captured the collective imagination as powerfully as the great white shark known as Carcharodon carcharias. Its silhouette, unmistakable with that triangular dorsal fin cutting through the surface, has become the ultimate symbol of the marine predator. Although the biological reality of this species is far richer and more nuanced than the simplified image that popular culture has constructed around it. It is an animal whose evolution has brought it to a point of predatory perfection that has existed in its essential forms for more than 60 million years. Adult males reach between 4 and 5 meters in length, while females, considerably larger, can exceed 6 meters and weigh more than 2,000 kilograms. The largest scientifically documented records point to 6.5 meters, although there are accounts of larger individuals that have not been rigorously verified. Its dentition is one of the most efficient cutting systems produced by evolution. Serrated triangular teeth, arranged in several overlapping rows that are continuously replaced throughout the animal's life. A great white shark can produce and lose more than 20,000 teeth over the course of its existence. What distinguishes the great white shark as a predator is not only its size, but the sophistication of its sensory system. It possesses the lateral line, an organ common to all sharks that detects vibrations and changes in water pressure with extraordinary sensitivity, capable of perceiving the movements of prey dozens of meters away. Its ampullae of Lorenzini, small pores distributed across the snout, are electroreceptors capable of detecting the electric fields generated by the muscular activity of any living animal, even when they are buried in the sand or completely motionless. It is, in essence, a detector of life in motion. The hunting strategy of the great white shark varies depending on the ecosystem and the prey, but its most spectacular technique is the vertical attack from mid-depths toward prey swimming at the surface. When hunting seals or sea lions near coastal colonies, such as those of the Seal Island archipelago in South Africa, it can reach speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour in its ascent and project its entire body out of the water in a display of explosive violence that scientists call breaching. The initial impact is designed to stun or kill the prey immediately, which minimizes the risk of the shark being injured during the struggle. However, one of the least known aspects of the great white shark is its life outside the coastal areas where it is usually studied. Research conducted through satellite tagging has revealed that these animals undertake migrations of thousands of kilometers across the open ocean, venturing into deep oceanic zones where they repeatedly dive to depths of up to 900 meters. During these dives, their body temperature decreases in a controlled manner, a mechanism that is not yet fully understood. Scientists speculate that they may be taking advantage of zones of thermal convergence where deep water prey concentrate, but the exact behavior they develop during these dives remains one of the unresolved mysteries of marine biology. The species is classified as vulnerable by the IUCN. Population estimates are difficult to determine with precision, but some studies suggest that they do not exceed 3,500 individuals across all the world's oceans, making it an extraordinarily scarce apex predator. Its longevity, estimated at more than 70 years according to recent studies of fossilized vertebrae, and its slow sexual maturity, which does not occur until 15 or 26 years depending on sex, make this species one of the most vulnerable to human pressure. One aspect that continues to generate scientific debate is the thermoregulation of the great white shark. Like tunas and the mako shark, the white shark is a mesothermic animal capable of maintaining certain tissues, especially the brain, eyes, and red muscles, at a temperature higher than that of the surrounding water through the rete-mirabile system. This physiological advantage allows it to process sensory information more rapidly in cold waters and sustain prolonged muscular efforts that a completely ectothermic elasmobranch could not maintain. The sophistication of this system, shared convergently with the large tunas, illustrates how evolution can produce identical solutions in completely separate lineages when selective pressures are sufficiently similar. If the great white shark represents the perfection of solitary predation based on instincts and senses, the orca, formerly called Orcinus orca, embodies something qualitatively different: predation as a social, coordinated, and culturally transmitted activity. Orcas are the most widely distributed apex predator on the planet, present in all oceans from the Arctic to Antarctica, and their evolutionary success does not rest on any exceptional physical characteristic, but on something far more unusual among non-human animals: the capacity to develop differentiated cultures that are transmitted from generation to generation. Adult male orcas can reach 9 meters in length and weigh more than 5 tons. Their dorsal fin, which can exceed 1 meter 80 centimeters in height in adult males, is the most visible identity marker of the species. But what makes the orca the most formidable predator in the ocean is not its body mass, but the architecture of its brain, which is, in absolute terms, one of the largest among all mammals, and possesses an exceptional development of the limbic system associated with emotions, and of the neocortex, related to complex thought. Orcas are organized into social structures called pods, family groups that may be composed of between 5 and 30 individuals, generally led by an older female, the matriarch, whose experience and knowledge of the environment are crucial for the survival of the group. Within these family units, distinct vocal dialects have been documented, that is, communication systems with their own acoustic characteristics that are exclusive to each pod and cannot be understood by different groups. Each family, in the strict sense, speaks its own language. Different orca populations have developed hunting specialties so distinct that some researchers suggest they should be classified as subspecies or even as different species. Resident orcas of the northeastern Pacific feed exclusively on fish, mainly Chinook salmon, and have developed echolocation techniques of extraordinary precision to detect schools of fish in turbid waters. Transient orcas from the same territory, in contrast, hunt marine mammals, including humpback whales and sperm whales of considerable size, and operate in almost absolute silence so as not to alert their prey, which also possess good hearing. Antarctic orcas have specialized in even more specific hunting techniques. Some create deliberate waves to knock seals off ice floes, a technique that requires coordination among several individuals with a precision reminiscent of military tactics. In recent years, interactions between orcas and great white sharks have been documented that have revealed an unexpected trophic dynamic. In several areas of the world, including the waters off South Africa, California, and the South Pacific, orcas have been recorded systematically hunting and feeding on adult white sharks. Orcas seem to have learned to immobilize sharks by holding them with precision and keeping them in a position that induces in them a state of tonic immobility, a neurological mechanism characteristic of elasmobranch that leaves them completely passive. What is particularly disturbing from an ecological perspective is that, in areas where orcas have begun to hunt white sharks regularly, the sharks have abandoned their usual territories for months, profoundly altering the dynamics of the ecosystem. One of the least understood phenomena in orca behavior is related to the attacks recorded against vessels in the Strait of Gibraltar and the Iberian coasts since 2020, carried out by a subgroup of Iberian orcas that seem to have developed an interaction behavior with sailboats that some researchers interpret as play or exploration, and others as social learning of a potentially defensive behavior. Whatever the cause, the phenomenon has no documented precedent and adds a layer of complexity to the already extraordinary behavioral repertoire of the species. Cultural transmission in orcas raises fundamental questions about the limits between instinct and learning in non-human animals. Cases have been documented in which a new hunting technique, apparently developed by one individual, spreads to the other members of the group within weeks and persists in the pod's repertoire for generations. In the 1980s, an orca from the northwestern Pacific began carrying dead fish on its head, a behavior with no apparent adaptive value that spread to other members of the group and continued for months before disappearing. These episodes are interpreted by some researchers as evidence of cultural behavior analogous to that of humans, with fashions and trends that do not respond to any survival need. The debate over whether this constitutes true animal culture or simply complex social imitation remains one of the most stimulating in contemporary ethology. The sperm whale, whose scientific name is Physeter macrocephalus, is the largest toothed animal that has ever existed on Earth, and also one of the most extraordinary in terms of its physiological capacities. With lengths that can exceed 20 meters in males and weights that reach 57 tons, this cetacean represents the absolute extreme of the scale among current marine predators. Although its hunting method differs radically from that of a shark or an orca, the sperm whale is a specialist of the depths that descends 2 or even 3 kilometers below the surface to hunt in total darkness. The head of the sperm whale, which can represent up to 1/3 of the animal's total length, houses the spermaceti organ, a cavity filled with a waxy oil whose exact function remains the subject of scientific debate. The most accepted hypothesis suggests that this organ acts as a controlled buoyancy system that allows the animal to regulate its ascent and descent in the water column. But there are researchers who propose that it could also function as structural reinforcement to withstand the tremendous pressures of deep dives, or even as a system for focusing the sounds it produces for echolocation. The sperm whale produces the most powerful sounds generated by any animal on Earth. Its echolocation clicks can reach 230 decibels, an intensity that at close range would be enough to cause physical damage to other animals. With this biological sonar, the sperm whale maps the abyssal depths with a precision that no technological instrument of the pre-industrial era could have matched, detecting prey in total darkness hundreds of meters away. At the bottom of the ocean, where no photon of sunlight reaches, the sperm whale sees through sound. The main prey of the sperm whale is the giant squid, or Architeuthis dux, and the colossal squid, Mesonicoteuthis hamiltoni, two of the largest invertebrates on the planet. The colossal squid can exceed 14 meters in length and possesses the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, with diameters of up to 30 centimeters, suggesting an extreme adaptation to the low light conditions of the depths. The circular marks that the toothed tentacles of these squids leave on the skin of sperm whales bear witness to battles that take place in the darkness of the bathypelagic zones under pressures of hundreds of atmospheres between two giants that no human being has been able to observe directly. The scars on the bodies of sperm whales are the only physical record of those confrontations. Adult male sperm whales carry out long solitary migrations toward polar waters where biological productivity is greater, while females and calves remain in family groups in tropical and subtropical zones. These social groups display exceptionally elaborate cooperative care behaviors. When a calf is in danger, the adults form protective circles, with their heads facing inward and their tails facing outward, creating a barrier that historical whalers knew as the Marguerite Formation and which could prove lethal for men in small hunting boats. The females of the group collectively nurse the calves, and it has been documented that adult individuals help keep injured or sick companions at the surface. One of the most enigmatic properties of the sperm whale is related to ambergris, a substance produced in the intestine of some individuals in response to irritation caused by the horny beaks of squids. Ambergris, which sperm whales expel or which is released after their death, is one of the most valuable substances in the natural world and has been used for centuries in perfumery as a fragrance fixative. Its origin was a mystery for a long time, and its appearance on beaches around the world as waxy masses with a peculiarly strong odor generated all kinds of speculation before marine biology definitively identified it as an intestinal product of the sperm whale. If the great white shark is the symbol of marine predation in the open sea, the bull shark, or Carcharinus lucus, represents something more unsettling from the perspective of interaction with human beings. It is the shark that inhabits the margins of the marine world, that diffuse space where the ocean enters rivers, ports, marshes, and coastal areas frequented by people. The bull shark is the only shark species that can effectively osmoregulate in both saltwater and freshwater, allowing it to ascend rivers for hundreds of kilometers. Bull sharks have been documented in the Amazon River, more than 4,000 kilometers from the coast, in Lake Nicaragua, in the Ganges River, and in the Mississippi River, among other river systems. This capacity, unique among large sharks, to survive in fresh water is due to extraordinarily plastic renal and rectal regulation mechanisms that adjust the concentration of solutes in their tissues according to the salinity of the environment. The ecological result of this plasticity is that the bull shark occupies territories that no other elasmobranch of its size can exploit, and those territories systematically include areas of high human density. Adult male bull sharks reach between 2.5 and 3 meters, while females can exceed 3 meters and weigh more than 300 kilos. Their morphology is compact and muscular, with a blunt, broad head that has earned them their popular name, and their temperament is notably more aggressive than that of other shark species of comparable size. Behavioral studies indicate that the bull shark is territorially reactive, meaning that it can respond aggressively to intrusions into its immediate space, even without the stimulus of a food signal. Scientists relate the higher rate of unprovoked attacks attributed to this species, compared with others, precisely to that combination of territorial aggression and preference for coastal habitats. The tiger shark is the second largest shark among those considered dangerous to humans, with lengths that can exceed 5 meters in adult females, and it probably has the most generalist diet of any known shark. Scientific analyses of its stomach have revealed a list of contents that include sea turtles, dolphins, seabirds, rays, sea snakes, horses, shoe leather, and, in documented cases, automobile license plates. This tendency to ingest practically any object or being it finds in its environment has earned it the nickname, the garbage can of the ocean. Although this characterization does little justice to the adaptive complexity of the species, its teeth have a unique morphology among sharks, curved backward with a notch on the edge that acts like a saw, capable of cutting the shell of an adult green turtle with relative ease. Sea turtles constitute an essential part of its diet in many ecosystems, which makes the tiger shark a natural controller of chelonian populations. The waters of Hawaii are one of the ecosystems where the interaction between tiger sharks and sea turtles has been best documented, and where the highest rates of sightings of the species near the coast have also been recorded. The marine crocodile, or saltwater crocodile, is the largest reptile in the world and the only crocodile that regularly ventures into the ocean, traveling hundreds of kilometers through open sea to colonize new islands and coastal territories, with lengths that in adult males can exceed 6 meters and weights that reach 1,000 kilograms. This animal combines the evolutionary legacy of the archosaurs of the Triassic with a capacity for adaptation to marine environments that no other living reptile possesses. Its distribution range extends from the eastern coasts of India and Sri Lanka to northern Australia and the islands of the western Pacific, encompassing an arc of ecosystems that includes mangroves, estuaries, rivers, and marine coasts. In northern Australia, where populations are denser after decades of legal protection, encounters between saltwater crocodiles and human beings in coastal areas and even on ocean beaches are recorded regularly. It is the only animal in this account that is not exclusively marine but uses the ocean as a territory for expansion and hunting with an effectiveness that places it among the most lethal coastal predators on the planet. The bite force of the saltwater crocodile is the highest recorded among all living animals, exceeding 1,700 kilograms of force per square centimeter in adult specimens, a figure that even surpasses large sharks in absolute terms. However, most of its success as a predator does not derive from that force, but from its extraordinary patience and its ability to remain completely motionless for hours, with only its eyes and nostrils above the surface, waiting for prey to come close enough to trigger an attack of a speed and violence that is difficult to anticipate given its apparent passivity. One of the lesser-known aspects of the saltwater crocodile is its capacity to make long-distance ocean crossings. Satellite tracking studies have documented individuals that have crossed stretches of open sea of more than 900 kilometers with no land in any direction. Researchers have verified that these reptiles use surface ocean currents as passive transport highways, allowing themselves to be carried when conditions are favorable and stopping when the currents reverse. It is a surprisingly sophisticated navigational behavior for an animal whose brain is a fraction of that of cetaceans. In polar ecosystems, where extreme conditions have selected extraordinarily efficient lifeforms, the leopard seal is one of the most versatile and least studied predators of the Antarctic. With lengths of up to 3.5 meters in females and a weight that can exceed 600 kilos, the leopard seal is the second largest pinniped in Antarctica after the southern elephant seal, and it is the only member of the group that regularly feeds on other pinnipeds. Its dentition is one of the most specialized among marine mammals. The molars have a trisected morphology that acts as a strainer, allowing it to filter krill with an efficiency comparable to that of the great mysticated cetaceans, while the canines are long and sharp, designed to hold and tear large prey such as penguins and the pups of other seals. That is, the leopard seal has developed, within a single dentition, the tools for two completely different feeding strategies, an adaptation that has no equivalent among non-human mammals. The leopard seal hunts penguins with an efficiency and brutality that are striking even to researchers accustomed to predatory behaviors. It captures penguins near the edges of the ice or underwater and shakes them laterally with high-frequency movements to strip off their skin and feathers before eating the flesh, a technique known as skinning. At times it plays with live prey for prolonged periods, which has been interpreted by some researchers as practice of hunting skills, and by others as a behavior of feeding opportunism without an intentional component. At the opposite end of the size spectrum, the southern elephant seal is the largest pinniped in the world. Males can exceed 5 meters and weigh more than 2,000 kilos. Although it does not feed on large prey like leopard seals but mainly on fish and squid, the elephant seal is a deep-water predator of extraordinary physiological capacity. Males carry out dives that regularly exceed 1,500 meters in depth and can remain underwater for more than 100 minutes without breathing, breaking apnea records among non-flying mammals. Size is by no means a necessary condition for being one of the most dangerous predators in the ocean, and no group of animals illustrates this principle more clearly than marine organisms whose main weapon is venom. The ocean has produced some of the most sophisticated and lethal envenomation systems of any ecosystem on the planet, and several of them are found in creatures of modest or directly tiny size. The blue-ringed octopus is perhaps the most extreme example of this paradox between size and dangerousness. With a size that usually does not exceed 20 centimeters and a weight of barely a few grams, this Indo-Pacific cephalopod carries tetrodotoxin, the same neurotoxin contained in the pufferfish, produced by symbiotic bacteria that live in its tissues. Tetrodotoxin blocks sodium channels in nerve cell membranes, causing progressive muscular paralysis that in sufficient doses stops the respiratory muscles. There is no known antidote for tetrodotoxin, and a single blue-ringed octopus contains enough venom to kill 26 adult people. The most disturbing thing about the blue-ringed octopus is not the potency of its venom, but its visibility. When the animal is calm or camouflaged, its colors are dull and brown, practically indistinguishable from rocks or coral. The characteristic iridescent blue rings only appear when the animal feels threatened, in a warning signal that is so striking that human instinct may interpret it as an invitation to touch it. Accidents with this species are more frequent than might be expected, and most occur in shallow beach areas where bathers lift stones or handle objects from the bottom without caution. The stonefish is the most venomous fish in the world, and a master of passive camouflage so effective that it is practically indistinguishable from a rock covered with algae or dead coral. Its dorsal spines, 13 in total, inject a protein venom that causes immediate and devastating pain, described by victims as the most intense a human being can experience, followed by tissue necrosis, cardiac problems, and, in severe cases, death. The stonefish does not actively attack its human prey, but rather represents a danger to those who accidentally step on it, which makes it a passive threat, but with consequences that do not differ in severity from those of an active predator. Jellyfish of the genus Chironex, popularly known as sea wasps or box jellyfish, are probably the most lethal invertebrates in the ocean. The species Chironex fleckeri, present in the coastal waters of the Indo-Pacific and northern Australia, has tentacles that can reach 3 meters in length and are covered with nematocysts, stinging cells that fire at speeds of 3 million G when activated by contact. The venom they inject simultaneously attacks the nervous system, the heart, and the skin tissues, and can cause death in as little as 2 minutes in severe exposures before the victim can reach the shore. Box jellyfish are estimated to be responsible for more deaths on Australian coasts than sharks, crocodiles, and sea snakes combined. Sea snakes, although rarely aggressive toward humans, represent another vertex of oceanic venom danger. The yellow-bellied sea snake is the snake with the widest geographic distribution in the world, present in all tropical and subtropical oceans except the Atlantic, and its neurotoxic venom is considerably more potent than that of the cobra. The vast majority of encounters between humans and sea snakes do not end in envenomation because these snakes have small mouths and docile temperaments, but under conditions of handling or stress they can bite with severe consequences. The textile cone, a harmless-looking marine snail that does not exceed 15 centimeters, represents another form of venomous danger that illustrates how deceptive appearance can be in the ocean. This Indo-Pacific gastropod has a venomous apparatus in the form of a retractable harpoon called a toxoglossan radula, capable of firing in any direction, even toward the hand holding the snail. The venom of cone snails, called conotoxin, is a mixture of neuroactive peptides of extraordinary molecular specificity. Each species of the genus Conus produces a unique combination of conotoxins that target specific nerve receptors with a precision that has aroused the interest of pharmacology. Some of these compounds are being investigated as next-generation analgesics, but in natural doses the venom of the textile cone can cause respiratory paralysis and death within a few hours. The appeal of its geometrically perfect shell has cost the lives of collectors who picked it up from the seafloor without caution. For centuries, the kraken was a creature of Norse mythology, a sea monster of impossible proportions, capable of sinking ships and dragging sailors into the depths. 20th and 21st century marine biology has not entirely disproved that mythology. It has discovered that the ocean depths indeed harbour squids of extraordinary size, which are themselves prey to other giants and possess biological characteristics that continue to challenge scientific understanding. The giant squid was known for decades almost exclusively through specimens stranded on beaches, fragments found in the stomachs of sperm whales, or body parts occasionally recovered by deep-sea trawling nets. The first images of a living individual in its natural habitat were not obtained until 2004, when a Japanese team led by Tsunemi Kubodera photographed an adult specimen at more than 900 meters deep in the North Pacific, an achievement that required years of preparation and the use of special bait. The creature appearing in those images was so different from dead or stranded specimens, so dynamic and capable of rapid and coordinated movement, that it radically changed the scientific perception of the species. Female giant squids can reach up to 13 meters in total length, including the tentacles, although the mantle or main body rarely exceeds 2 meters. Their eyes, with diameters of up to 30 centimeters, are the largest in the animal kingdom, an adaptation to the low-light conditions of the mesopelagic zone where they live. The tentacles are equipped with toothed suckers with chitinous edges that exert considerable pressure and leave characteristic scars on the skin of the sperm whales that hunt them. There is an ongoing scientific debate about whether the giant squid is fundamentally an active predator that pursues prey or an opportunistic ambusher, and the available images support both interpretations depending on the context. The colossal squid is less well known than the giant squid, but potentially more formidable. Although its total length is comparable or somewhat smaller, its body mass is considerably greater, and its tentacles are equipped with rotating hooks of 3 centimeters, hook-shaped structures that can rotate 360 degrees and give its limbs a gripping and lacerating capacity that the toothed suckers of the giant squid do not possess. Only a handful of adult specimens have been captured, all in Antarctic waters, and knowledge about its biology, reproductive behavior, and distribution remains extremely limited. The existence of these exceptionally large creatures in the ocean depths raises questions that marine biology still cannot answer with certainty. Do even larger forms exist in the abyss that have never been captured or photographed? The life cycles of giant squids are poorly understood. Their reproduction has been partially documented, and it is unknown whether the size of known specimens represents the true limit of the species or simply the limit of what has reached the surface or fishing nets. The deep ocean remains the least explored place on Earth, and its predators the most unknown. While the great white shark operates mainly in coastal zones, relatively accessible for study, the oceanic white-tip shark is the lord of the open ocean, a deep-sea predator that historically was considered by many specialists to be the most dangerous shark for humans, although for very different reasons than the white shark. The Longomanus shark is the one that has historically been responsible for the most catastrophic tragedies in shipwrecks and sinkings, due to its habit of congregating around floating objects and its persistence in the presence of victims in the water. Studies from the 1960s and 1970s, when oceanic shark populations were still abundant, described the longimanus shark as extraordinarily common in tropical open waters, possibly the most numerous large vertebrate species on the planet. Today, that description belongs to another world. Longimanus populations have collapsed by more than 80%, according to some estimates, mainly victims of the fin trade and bycatch, and the species is classified as critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. An animal that was described as omnipresent in the 1960s is now rarely sighted in tropical oceans. The short-fin mako shark deserves specific mention as the fastest shark in the ocean, capable of reaching speeds of up to 74 kilometers per hour in short bursts, a figure that makes it one of the fastest fish in the world. Its fusiform body, with clean lines reminiscent of a torpedo, and its body temperature higher than that of the surrounding water, thanks to a heat exchange system known as rete mirabile, make it a hunter of tuna, swordfish, and other fast fish that require exceptional pursuit speed. The mako is one of the few sharks that exhibits breaching behavior, leaping up to 6 meters out of the water when in active pursuit or when hooked, and its size can exceed 3 meters with weights of more than 400 kilograms. The basking shark, the second largest shark in the world, with lengths that can exceed 12 meters, is technically a predator, but of such a different modality that it is difficult to include it in the same category as white sharks or makos. It is a filter feeder that feeds on zooplankton, small fish, and pelagic eggs by swimming slowly with its mouth open, filtering up to 2,000 tons of water per hour through its modified gills. However, its enormous size makes it an animal capable of causing considerable damage to vessels with which it collides, and its behavior of congregating in areas of high productivity brings it into frequent contact with ships and fishing boats. Large pelagic predators that are neither sharks nor marine mammals constitute a category often underestimated in discussions about ocean giants, but the swordfish, the blue marlin, and their relatives represent a form of high-speed predation that is, at its own level, as impressive as that of any shark. The swordfish can reach 4.5 meters in length and weigh more than 600 kilograms, and it is one of the fastest fish in the ocean with estimated speeds of up to 90 kilometers per hour. The elongated bill of the swordfish, which can represent a third of its total body length, is not a stabbing weapon as it is sometimes popularly described, but rather a lateral attack tool with which the animal strikes schools of fish or squid to stun them before consuming them. There are historical records of swordfish that have attacked wooden or fiberglass vessels, driving their bill into the hull structure, although these attacks are interpreted as defensive or confusion responses rather than deliberate predatory attacks. There are documented cases in the scientific literature in which the bill of a swordfish was found embedded several centimeters into the wood of a naval hull. The Atlantic bluefin tuna, or Thunus thinus, is another of the large pelagic predators that rarely receive the attention they deserve in the context of ocean giants. Adult males can exceed 3 meters in length and reach 650 kilograms, making them the largest teleost fish in the North Atlantic. Like the mako shark, the bluefin tuna is a partially warm-blooded animal thanks to the same rete mirabile system, which allows it to maintain muscle temperature several degrees above the surrounding water and operate with a power and speed that cold-blooded fish of similar size could not match. Its role as an apex predator in the pelagic ecosystems of the North Atlantic and the Mediterranean is fundamental for the regulation of populations of small and medium-sized fish, although fishing pressures on the species have been so intense that its numbers are far below historical levels. The whale shark, designated Rhynchodon typus, is the largest fish in the world, with documented lengths of up to 12 meters and credible estimates of larger individuals. Unlike almost all the other animals mentioned in this account, the whale shark is completely harmless to any creature larger than a few centimeters, as it feeds exclusively on plankton, krill, fish eggs, and very small fish through filtration. However, it deserves its place in any discussion about ocean giants for what its biology reveals about the limits of size in the ocean and the ecosystems that make possible the existence of animals of this magnitude. Despite being one of the most charismatic species in the ocean and attracting thousands of tourists each year to the few places in the world where it is possible to swim with them, the whale shark is one of the least understood large marine species. Its exact distribution, its complete migratory routes, its reproductive behaviors, and its birthing areas are aspects that science has only begun to clarify in the last 2 decades, thanks to satellite tracking technology. Females, which are believed to be viviparous, have never been observed giving birth, and newborns are rarely found. There is a significant gap in knowledge about the early life stage of this species. Documented interactions between whale sharks and other species, including smaller sharks and large predators, suggest that these filter-feeding giants are not completely passive in the ecosystem. Schools of fish that gather around whale sharks in areas of high productivity, using their enormous mass as shelter from external predators, create a dynamic of unintentional protection that affects the distribution of other species. The whale shark, without being an active predator, reshapes the behavioral patterns of other animals simply by its presence. Coral reefs are the most biodiverse marine ecosystems on the planet, and within them, predation operates at multiple scales simultaneously. From large reef sharks to organisms only centimeters long, whose hunting efficiency is inversely proportional to their size. The Caribbean reef shark and the Indo-Pacific reef shark are regulators of coral trophic chains, maintaining populations of medium-sized fish in balances that allow the health of the reef as an ecosystem. The lionfish, designated Ptera volitans and Ptera miles, native to the Indo-Pacific and currently an established invasive species in the Mediterranean, the Western Atlantic, and the Caribbean, is one of the most studied examples of how an effective predator can destabilize an entire ecosystem when introduced outside its natural range. With dorsal spines that inject a protein venom intensely painful but rarely lethal for healthy adults, the lionfish has no known predators in the Atlantic waters where it has established itself as an invader, allowing it to reach population densities that no native carnivorous fish can tolerate. Studies on Caribbean reefs have documented that in the presence of dense lionfish populations, the biomass of small fish on reefs can be reduced by more than 80%. The giant moray eel, or Gymnothorax javanicus, which can reach 3 meters in length and weigh 30 kilograms, is a nocturnal reef predator with an anatomy designed for hunting in confined spaces. Its jaws have a second set of teeth in the throat, the pharyngeal jaws, which can move forward to grasp prey while the main jaws hold it, an adaptation that prevents slippery fish or octopuses from escaping once captured. Behavioral studies have documented that moray eels and groupers occasionally cooperate in joint hunts, with the grouper signaling with head movements the location of prey hidden in crevices where the moray can enter. It is one of the few examples of interspecific cooperation in hunting documented outside mammals. With the grouper signaling with head movements the location of prey hidden in crevices where the moray can enter. It is one of the few examples of interspecific cooperation in hunting documented outside mammals. The common octopus and the giant Pacific octopus represent intelligence taken to its extreme among marine invertebrates. The giant Pacific octopus, with arm spans that can exceed 4 meters and weights of more than 50 kilograms, hunts crabs, lobsters, clams, and fish with a variety of techniques that include active camouflage, the use of tools, the mechanical opening of containers, and ambush. Its brain, partially distributed in the arms, each of which has a certain neurological autonomy, represents a cognitive architecture radically different from that of vertebrates and yet capable of learning, memory, and problem-solving of a sophistication that continues to surprise researchers. Beyond 500 meters in depth begins a zone of the ocean that scientists call the bathypelagic zone, a world of permanent darkness, crushing pressures, and temperatures near zero, where evolution has produced some of the strangest life forms on the planet. Predators of the deep ocean are adapted to an environment where encounters with prey are rare and energy is scarce, which has led to evolutionary solutions of an originality that has no equivalent in any other ecosystem. The viperfish, or Scholiodes sloani, is one of the most fiercely armed predators of the depths, with teeth so long in proportion to its body that they do not fit inside the mouth when the jaws are closed, protruding outward like fangs. It reaches barely 30 centimeters in length, but its attack techniques include the ability to project its lower jaw forward to capture prey of a size comparable to its own. In the deep ocean, where feeding opportunities are scarce, the ability to capture large prey relative to one's own size is a critical adaptation. The gulper eel, also known as the pelican eel, can open its jaws to an angle of almost 180 degrees and expand its stomach to ingest prey larger than its own body, an evolutionary solution to the problem of food scarcity that is anatomically extraordinary. Its bioluminescence, present at the tip of the tail, is believed to function as a lure to attract prey in the complete darkness of the abyss. The deep-sea anglerfish is perhaps the most recognizable predator of the ocean depths, thanks to the luminous appendage that projects from its forehead, a modification of the first dorsal spine that contains bioluminescent bacteria in symbiosis. The light it emits acts as bait in absolute darkness, attracting curious crustaceans and fish toward the mouth of the anglerfish, which in females is disproportionately large relative to the body. Male anglerfish present one of the most extreme reproductive systems in the animal world. They are obligate parasites of the females, physically fusing with them at the moment of copulation to the point of remaining permanently attached, with their circulatory systems connected and their organs reduced to simple sperm producers. One of the most persistent mysteries of deep-sea marine biology has to do with the so-called abyssal gigantism, the phenomenon by which various species of invertebrates and some vertebrates reach in the depth sizes much greater than those of their relatives in surface waters. The giant isopod, a deep relative of the woodlouse, can exceed 45 centimeters in length, while sea spiders, or pycnogonids of Antarctic depths, can have spans of more than 70 centimeters. The hypotheses that explain this gigantism include low temperature, oxygen availability in cold deep waters, and evolutionary pressure to accumulate energy reserves in environments where food is unpredictable, but none of them is completely satisfactory to explain the phenomenon in all the groups where it is observed. The fossil record of the ocean adds a temporal dimension to the understanding of marine predators that considerably expands the horizon of what is possible. The seas of the past were inhabited by creatures whose size makes even the largest current predators pale, and some of those creatures are relatively recent in geological terms, suggesting that present-day oceans are in some sense calmer than they have been. The megalodon is the most famous example of a large extinct predator, a shark that inhabited the oceans between approximately 23 and 3.6 million years ago, and that is estimated to have reached between 15 and 20 meters in length, with a bite force calculated between 10 and 18 tons. The fossilized teeth of Megalodon, which can exceed 17 centimeters in height, are the only direct remains of the animal that are normally preserved, given that cartilage does not fossilize well. Bite marks on bones of whales from the Miocene and Pliocene constitute indirect evidence of its diet, which consisted mainly of medium-sized cetaceans. The extinction of Megalodon, which was not immediate but gradual over several million years, coincides approximately with the emergence and diversification of orcas and other large delphinids, which has led some researchers to propose that ecological competition with advanced intelligence-toothed cetaceans may have been one of the factors that precipitated its decline. However, changes in the distribution and size of whales that constituted its main prey during that period are the most widely accepted alternative explanation. When prey of optimal size for such a large superpredator become rarer or migrate toward colder waters that an animal of that mass cannot access efficiently, the energy equation of the giant simply ceases to function. Leviathan melvillei, named in honor of the author of Moby Dick, is another extinct predator that deserves attention. A Miocene sperm whale with functional teeth in both jaws that could exceed 36 centimeters, the largest attacking teeth of any known animal. With an estimated length of between 13 and 17 meters, Leviathan was contemporary with Megalodon and hunted in the same seas of the Pacific and South Atlantic, probably competing with it for large cetacean prey. The coexistence of these two superpredators in the same marine ecosystems of the Miocene presents an image of the oceans of that time as radically more violent and unpredictable than today. The question of whether Megalodon could survive in unexplored deep waters is one of the recurring themes in popular culture, but it has no support in the available scientific evidence. An animal that reached those proportions required a caloric productivity that only the photic surface zones of the ocean could provide, and its strategy of hunting large cetaceans in those zones would have left unequivocal traces in the form of damaged carcasses or cetaceans with bite marks that researchers would have detected. The total absence of positive evidence, combined with the ecological reasons why the current ocean could not sustain a super-predator of those characteristics, makes the hypothesis of survival scientifically indefensible, although understandably fascinating. Deep ocean exploration is, in terms of systematic coverage, comparatively more incomplete than the exploration of the lunar surface. Only around 20% of the ocean floor has been mapped with reasonably detailed resolution, and the water columns that connect the surface with those depths are explored even more sporadically. In that context, speaking of what the ocean hides is not unfounded speculation but a scientific observation. There exist entire ecosystems, complete species, and entire ecological processes that marine biology still does not know. The bloop sound, recorded by NOAA in 1997 through underwater hydrophones in the South Pacific, was for years one of the most studied sounds of unknown origin in the context of oceanography. Its acoustic profile, extremely powerful, and with characteristics that some compared with the biological signals of large animals, generated speculation about the possibility that some being of extraordinary proportions had produced it. The currently most accepted scientific explanation, supported by more recent analyses, points to the fracturing of large masses of ice on the Antarctic shelf, a process that can generate acoustic signals with characteristics superficially similar to biological ones. However, the story of the bloop illustrates how difficult the interpretation of data coming from ocean depths is, and how many questions remain open. In 1977, the 5'2" Hertz whale captured the attention of the researchers who discovered it for the first time, a whale whose call has a frequency of 52 hertzes, considerably higher than that of blue whales or fin whales, which vocalize between 10 and 40 hertzes, popularly called the loneliest whale in the world because its vocal frequency does not match that of any known species, and therefore hypothetically no other individual can hear it. The 52 hertzes whale continues to be an object of scientific interest. Its exact identity, whether it is an individual with a vocal deformity or the representative of an unknown species or subspecies, has never been definitively established. Historical sightings of unidentified marine animals, the so-called problem of oceanic cryptids, have motivated for decades debates on the margins between serious biology and unfounded speculation. However, the discovery of the coelacanth in 1938, a species of lobe-finned fish believed to have been extinct for 65 million years, and that turned out to be living off the coasts of South Africa and the Indo-Pacific, that of the giant squid, alive in 2004, and that of multiple species of deep whales and sharks in recent decades, are reminders that the natural history of the ocean is far from having been fully written. Oxygen minimum zones in the oceans, also called hypoxia zones, are intermediate regions of the water column where the concentration of dissolved oxygen is so low that most animals cannot survive, making them ecological frontiers that separate surface water communities from deep water communities. However, some organisms, including certain sharks such as the silky shark, have developed the ability to enter these zones temporarily to hunt in an environment where they have practically no competition. What other predators use these zones regularly, and what ecosystems develop in them, is a question that marine biology is only beginning to explore. Bioluminescence, present in more than 80% of the creatures that inhabit the ocean depths, is another of the great open fields of research in marine biology. Although some of its uses are understood, such as the attraction of prey in anglerfish or intraspecific communication in some squids, the function of most bioluminescent systems in most species is unknown. There is even the hypothesis, supported by some preliminary data, that certain deep-sea sharks could use their bioluminescence to communicate with other individuals of their species, a behavior that would radically change the understanding of the social life of these animals. The oceans not only hide sizes that science has not measured, they hide behaviors that science cannot yet imagine. The goblin shark is one of the most disturbing predators of the mid-depths, inhabiting between 270 and 960 meters in depth. With a length that can exceed 4 meters and a jaw that can be projected forward several centimeters by means of a muscular catapult mechanism unique among sharks. The goblin shark captures prey with a speed of jaw projection that researchers have compared to a spring. Its flat and long snout, densely covered with ampullae of Lorenzini, acts as an electrosensory radar that allows it to detect the electrical activity of fish and squid in the complete darkness of the mesobathyal. It has only been observed alive on a few occasions, generally when trawl nets accidentally bring it to the surface, and the specimens do not survive outside their pressurized environment. Everything that is known about its biology, its reproduction, and its hunting behaviors comes from those accidental encounters and from the morphology of the carcasses, which makes the goblin shark one of the large vertebrates whose daily life remains most in the realm of scientific speculation. A marine ecosystem without its apex predators is not simply a calmer ecosystem, it is an ecosystem in the process of collapse. The understanding of the cascading effects produced by the disappearance of large marine predators is one of the most important advances in marine ecology in recent decades, and its implications are as counterintuitive as they are profound. The concept of trophic cascade describes the process by which the removal of a top predator triggers a series of changes that propagate downward through the food chain, frequently with devastating effects at the base of the ecosystem. The most studied and cited case in marine ecosystems is that of sea otters, sea urchins, and kelp forests in the North Pacific. When sea otters were hunted to near extinction during the 18th and 19th centuries for the fur trade, populations of sea urchins, their main prey, increased uncontrollably. The urchins consumed the holdfasts and fronds of the giant brown algae that formed kelp forests, destroying an ecosystem that hosts a biodiversity of hundreds of species. With the partial recovery of sea otters in the 20th century, kelp forests began to recover in some areas, demonstrating that the presence or absence of a predator can control the physical architecture of an entire ecosystem. Trophic cascades involving sharks are more difficult to study due to the difficulty of monitoring open ocean ecosystems, but the available data are equally compelling. In areas of the North Atlantic, where populations of large sharks have been decimated by overfishing, populations of rays and other mid-level elasmobranchs have multiplied, in turn decimating populations of bivalve mollusks and other invertebrates that form the base of many coastal fisheries. In some cases, the removal of sharks has led to the collapse of scallop and clam fisheries that had centuries of history. The case of coral reefs is equally instructive. Reef sharks control populations of medium-sized herbivorous fish, which in turn control the growth of algae on coral. Without sharks, the proliferation of these intermediate fish can destabilize the balance between coral and algae, favoring macroalgae over coral and transforming coral reefs into algal deserts in a few years. The presence of sharks, paradoxically, is one of the factors that maintain the health and biodiversity of reefs. The biology of large cetaceans adds an additional dimension to this picture. Whales, including those hunted by orcas, contribute to the ocean nutrient cycle in ways that have only recently been quantified. When a whale defecates in the upper layers of the ocean, it releases iron and nitrogen, nutrients that stimulate the growth of phytoplankton, the base of almost the entire marine food chain and one of the main carbon sinks of the planet. The so-called whale pump, as ecologists have termed this nutrient cycle, implies that populations of large cetaceans have a direct effect on the primary productivity of the ocean and, by extension, on the capacity of the ocean to absorb atmospheric carbon dioxide. Oceans with large whale populations are, quite literally, more productive oceans. The survey of great ocean predators reveals a system of a complexity and interdependence that defies any attempt to reduce it to a simple hierarchy of hunters and hunted. From the great white shark, with its sensory precision and mysterious migrations, to the blue-ringed octopus with its pharmacologically precise venom, from the silent battles between sperm whales and colossal squids in abyssal zones, to the tactical intelligence of orcas that have learned to hunt large sharks. The ocean is a dynamic system in which predation is not a peripheral phenomenon, but the central engine that maintains the balance of its ecological structures. The predators described here are in many cases species in decline, threatened by overfishing, habitat degradation, chemical pollution, and changes in the temperature and chemistry of the ocean. The oceanic white-tip shark, which in the 1960s was possibly the most abundant large vertebrate on the planet, has lost more than 80% of its population. The sperm whale was hunted during the 18th and 19th centuries in numbers that lead current biologists to speak of a pre-whaling ocean completely different from the present one. The great white shark has global populations that probably do not exceed 3,000 or 4,000 individuals. 4.5. Marine biology continues to discover new species, new capacities, and new interactions in ocean ecosystems at a pace that suggests that the knowledge available today is only a fraction of what exists. Advances in underwater robotics, in environmental DNA sequencing, which allows the detection of the presence of species from fragments of genetic material they leave in the water, and in marine acoustics are opening windows into worlds that were previously inaccessible, and each new window that opens reveals an additional complexity that renders previous simplifications obsolete. The ocean is not a monolithic space but a sum of stratified, connected, and constantly transforming ecosystems, where each predator is at the same time an agent of death and a pillar of life.